Amen. Well, you guys can take a seat. Good morning. I'm excited to be here today. How about you? All right. Heard last week was great. It's good to be back. Last weekend was fun for me too. I got to officiate a wedding on Saturday night in Minneapolis for one of my good friends from college, and I put all this time and effort into the message I was going to give at their wedding to make it really personalized. I used their initials in it and everything. And as I stood there looking at them staring at each other giving this message on their wedding day, I realized this was a total waste of time. They're so nervous and excited they will remember nothing that I'm saying. And I couldn't even be mad because I realized I don't remember a single word the pastor said at my wedding either, other than you may kiss the bride. I like that part. I don't remember any of the rest of it. And I'm betting most of the married people in here don't either. But it was so good to be there. It was really unique in the middle of this Happily Even After series where we've been talking about love and sex and dating and marriage to be a part of a wedding. And it kind of gave me the opportunity to look at it through some different eyes. And it struck me as I looked around at this beautifully and expensively decorated wedding reception that it's interesting how many marriages begin so beautifully and end up so ugly. Like, no one goes to the altar thinking, I want to have the worst marriage possible. But there are a whole lot of married people living in misery, and I can't help but wonder if that's partially due to the fact that we live in a culture which spends an incredible amount of time, effort, and money preparing for the wedding, but very little preparing for the marriage. And in terms of preparing for the marriage, the worst part is, like, if we're preparing at all, the picture of marriage that we're preparing for is often a bad one. And so today what we're going to do is crack open the greatest book on love, sex, marriage, and relationships that you will ever read, Song of Songs, and take a deep look at marriage and the kind of true love that it takes to make a marriage flourish so that all of us, whether we are married, whether we hope to be married someday, or whether we're in a position to speak into the marriages of people whose lives crash into ours every day, all of us can leave here with a bigger, better vision. One that stands out against the culture of broken marriages and broken relationships, of what God says marriage is really all about. Because I think if we're going to do marriage, and we are, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago, but I'll say it again, it's worth mentioning, the statistics tell us that 90% of adults in America would like to be married. Even adults who say marriage is a dead institution would like to be married. Okay, so if we're going to do marriage, it's probably worth putting in some effort to doing it well. So how? Well, we're going to ask God that question today. We're not going to ask me, like, deep thoughts from Mike about how to be a perfect husband. I would love to give that message, but my wife goes to this church. So I feel like she'd rat me out. And we're not going to ask ourselves, and we're not going to ask our society. We've tried that, and we've ended up in a space where the real divorce rate in America right now is about 40%. 4 out of 10. That is a lot of hurt and a lot of pain. That affects a lot of people and a lot of families. And so when it comes to doing marriage well and doing it right, it's best to lean not on our own understanding. So if you have Bibles with you today, you can crack them open to Song of Songs, chapter 8. It's the very last chapter in the book. If you don't have a Bible with you, the words will be on the screen. And if you don't own a Bible, or your kids don't have one that's easily readable in a kid's format, please take one from the Next Steps table. We've given hundreds of Bibles away over the last few years, and I'd love to see more of them disappear today. Dig really deeply into a few verses that show us Solomon and his bride after the honeymoon phase is over. Okay, we've taken a look at this book, and they like saw each other, and they got attracted, and then they fell in love, and they started dating, and then they got ready for marriage, and they got married, and then they got it on, and then they spent 1/4 of the book fighting. #marriage, okay? And this is after they've kind of ironed that out a little bit, and they kind of show back up, and everyone's like, wow, something's happening there, like something good is here, and their friends ask them, what is this thing that you have? How can I have that kind of love? How can I have this kind of marriage that you have? And she gives an answer that I think is one of the most beautiful and profound passages about marriage in all of human literature. She talks about the kind of love that it takes to make a marriage strong, the kind of love that it takes to make a marriage prosper, about what makes it good and what makes it all that God designed it to be. And in these few verses, there are 7 things I want us to see about the kind of love marriage is meant to be built on. Okay, so it starts in verse 5. And the friends see the couple, and they're walking along, and their friends look at them and say, "Who is this coming up from the wilderness leaning on her beloved?" Like they see the way that they're walking and the way that they're holding hands and leaning on each other and interacting, and they're like, wow, you can just tell by the way that they're interacting with one another that there's something there. There's some love there. Who is this? And the first thing I want us to understand about love this morning is that true love is affectionate. True love is affectionate. Affection is not just a good thing in a marriage, it's a critically important thing. And here we are, I'm not advocating for PDA. I'm not saying like you got to be one of those couples that says stuff that makes everyone else around you uncomfortable. I had a good friend and mentor who liked to send his wife suggestive emails, okay? And she was a teacher, and one day she was teaching a class, and she had the smartboard going, and it was a screen share, and in the middle of her lesson, an email popped up from Andy. Message. He got banned from sending her emails during school ever again. So you don't got to be one of those people that makes everyone else feel weird. You don't have to be one of those couples that can't not be touching each other somehow. That's not what I'm talking about, okay? But affection is important. And I think in marriage, like as relationships go on and they grow, it's easy to neglect affection. It's easy to look and think, he knows I love him. I told him before. She knows I appreciate the things that she do. I told her she was beautiful 10 years ago. If that changes, I'll let her know. Like, I folded his laundry, whatever. And the thing about it is, we're not even trying to be mean, and we're not trying to withhold love or take away affection. It's just really easy in our lives to get into a rut where we're not actively pursuing it and actively giving it to somebody else. I want to tell you this, if you want to live happily even after, live by this mantra. If you think something nice, say it. Say it every time. Like, it's so easy to think something nice and be like, I said that yesterday. Saying it too many times. Oversay it. Say it, live it, do it. Live a life of affection. If there's no affection in your relationship, something's missing. And even if you don't feel affectionate, create affection. Like if people from the outside would look at your marriage and wonder whether the two of you actually like each other, there's a really good chance that one of the two of you is wondering the same thing. True love is affectionate. So their friends see them, and they can just tell by the way they're interacting that they have affection and they love each other. And then they ask their question about love, and she responds. And the second part of verse 5, she's talking about Solomon. And she says this really interesting thing. She says, under the apple tree I roused you. There your mother conceived you. There she was in labor, gave you birth. Time out. If you're looking at that thinking, that's an awkward verse, I want to reassure you, you're right. That's an awkward verse, okay? She looks at her husband and says, I made love to you under that tree, baby. Also, your mom gave birth to you right at that spot. Ugh. Okay. It's a weird two things to connect, right, in the same exact sentence. And I tell you this, I can't speak for anyone else, but as someone who's seen labor a time or two or four, okay? On those nights when, like, you sit down and you're like, awesome, the kids are in bed. There's nothing on TV. It's only 9. I only feel half dead, not all the way dead. How are you doing? The last thing on earth I want to be thinking about is my mom giving birth to me, okay? That just is. That just is. Okay? But Solomon's beloved doesn't make that connection just once. She makes it over and over and over again in the book repeatedly, and it seems super weird and a little bit creepy, but what she's saying when you understand it is so awesome and so profound. She's talking about how true love is life-giving. She makes this connection between their love and his mom giving birth to him to say this marriage love that we have is a continuation of life. Like you had parents and they met and they fell in love and that love produced you, and then we met and we fell in love and that love is going to produce the next generation. Like that's what the design is. That's how God made it to work. And think about it. God's entire plan for our continuation as a species is based on this. God could have invented any way for the next generation of humans to come, right? We could have grown up out of the ground like plants, and then when you wanted a baby, you just go pick a ripe one and wash off the dirt and take it home. The stork thing could have been true. Like God could have invented any way for the next generation to appear on this planet, but what he decided is that he was going to make love, the greatest expression of human intimacy, the fountain of life. That's crazy. It's so cool the way God designed it. I had this moment this week where Jenny helped our twin 3-year-olds make a craft. And it was terrible, but they were proud of it. So they came upstairs and they're like, Dad, you gotta come see the craft. And so I went downstairs to look at this craft that they made, and they're showing me. And I hugged Jenny, just put my arm around her, and Tommy got this big dumb grin on his face. And he said, "Why'd you hug Mommy?" I told him, "I love Mommy." And I had this moment where I looked at this little kid, and I was like, oh my goodness, Tommy, your entire existence, like the very fact that you have life starts with the love story between your mom and me. That's how it's meant to be. Love is life-giving, both to the people in it and to the generations that follow. Love story after love story after love story after love story. That's how God designed it to be. And then she continues speaking. Sorry about that. She continues speaking, and she says, "Place me as a seal over your heart, like a seal on your arm, for love is as strong as death." That is a cool image, but it's one that's profoundly countercultural in our world. And I think understanding what she's really saying, makes all the difference in living happily even after or not. What she's saying is that true love endures. True love endures. It lasts. It's not temporary. That's what she means when she says, "Place me as a seal on your heart and your arms." In that culture, every man had his own seal. It was either an image of him or some sort of crest that was his, that represented who he was and his identity. And often that seal was carved into a ring. And when they wanted to sign a contract or show ownership or possession, they'd pour wax on it, and he would stamp it with his seal, with his ring, to say, "This is mine." When she says, "Put me as a seal on your heart and your arms," she's saying, I want to be yours. Kind of like we brand cattle, like brand me in the way that you feel and the things that you do. I want to belong to you. That's a big thing to say. That's a big thing to say because there's deep vulnerability in that. We know that. Like every married person in the room could tell you there's deep vulnerability there. And if you say that, "I want to belong to you, place me as a seal on your heart and on your actions, and the way that you think and the things that you do, I want to belong to you," you open yourself up. You open yourself up completely there, and no one can hurt you like a spouse. But it's worth it because no one can bring joy or love like a spouse. And she says, love is as strong as death. A few weeks ago, we talked about the 3 different words for love that are found in Song of Songs. We talked about raya, which is this friendship, companionship love, and dod, which is physical affection, and then ahava, which is this love of the will, this commitment. And that's the word that's used here. She says, ahava is as strong as death. It's lasting. There are no takebacks. And I think about that picture that she's painting, and then I think about the way we do love in 21st century America, and they look nothing alike. It's just not how we do it. We like to move straight from hanging out to having sex without making any long-term commitment in the middle there. You know, we date and have sex and break up, and then date and have sex and break up, and then date and have sex and break up, and then we move in together before we're married, which is different profoundly than actually getting married, because getting married says, "I want all of you forever. I'm crossing the river and burning the bridge behind me." Cohabitating says, "I want some of you for now. I might want more later, but I'm leaving the back door open just in case." But that's what our world tells us to do. That's what our world tells us is good and normative. And then we wonder why our relationships are so broken and our divorce rate is sky high. It's because the way we date and cohabitate is practicing for divorce, not practicing for marriage. That's just how we do it in this culture. And if you've been there, if you are there now, if you're thinking about it and you're hearing these voices in your head talking about what the next step of your relationship is, I want to say something to you this morning. Of course you are. Grace, that's all you've ever heard from your world. That's all you've ever heard from your world is that that's how you should do it. And I want to tell you too, you are not too far gone. You are never too far gone for Jesus. Your past may not be what you want it to be. In the past, you may have settled for something less than God's picture of the kind of love you were built for and the kind of love you deserve, but you don't have to anymore. God has a better plan for your future. He has something better. Commitment. Enduring love. In Solomon's day, a young man would propose by offering the girl that he wanted to marry a glass of wine. And if she refused it, that was her way of saying, no thanks, I don't really want that. But if she drank from the glass, that was her way of saying yes. But in that day and age, saying yes wasn't just like yeah, maybe we'll see how the engagement period goes, we'll see what happens. It was, there is no backing out. As soon as I drink this wine, that's it. There is no other path forward. In fact, what would happen as soon as she drank the wine is that the two mothers, both the mother of the groom and the mother of the bride, would each put one hand on a plate, and they would smash that plate onto the ground. And the shattered pieces of the plate were meant to be a symbol for this couple that was heading towards marriage, that there is no going back. You cannot put the pieces back together. And even if you try, it's going to look profoundly different. You can't go back. I can speak to that personally in a little different way. Once when we were growing up, my brother and I were playing dodgeball inside the house. And because he's an idiot who can't dodge right, I threw a ball that hit a bunch of my mom's precious moments. This is really James's fault. If you see him later, tell him. But super glue did not fool her. There's no going back, okay? Once it's shattered, there is no going back. Last weekend, like right before the wedding ceremony, I sat down with the couple and I told them, hey, the most important words you're going to say when we walk in that room are till death, because love stays. Love stays. True love is enduring. Warm feelings come and go. The friendship, companionship, love of Raya might burn hot and cold. So might the love, the physical affection of Dode, but ahava stays. That's what it does. I remember a few years ago, there was a well-known Christian radio host, a guy named Pat Robertson, who got asked on his radio program but by a guy whose wife had Alzheimer's, whether it was okay to leave her. He said, she doesn't even remember me anymore. I'm feeling a little bit lonely. Can I just leave her in the assisted care and go find someone else? Is that okay? And Pat said, yes, that's not even her anymore. And I swallowed hard. That someone would hear that from a guy who was claiming to be teaching the Bible and be a Christian leader. It broke my heart that Nicholas Sparks had a better understanding of what love is supposed to be when he wrote the Notebook than Pat Robertson did when he gave real advice to real people. No, Pat. No, everybody. Love stays. True love endures. That's what it's built for. Someone's love, she says that, and then she says this. She said this about ahava: its jealousy is unyielding as the grave. That's an intense and semi-morbid picture. But she's saying true love is narrow. Okay, it's exclusive. There's room only for two. No more. It's limited and it's private. One of my Facebook friends posted an article this week about the divorce rate in America, and it suggested that maybe having open marriages is the next step to saving our marriages, because we're not built for monogamy. So if we can just take sex and we can free it up from the idea of commitment and love, then our marriages will really last longer. That's going to be the ticket, America. God begs to differ. I beg to differ. I don't want that. Love is jealous. Love is jealous like the grave. Not in the creepy stalkery way of jealous. I want to make that clear. Like if you're one of those people that needs to check in every 5 minutes and you put that app on your spouse or your girlfriend or your boyfriend's phone where you know where they are at all times, stop that. That's bad. That's creepy. Don't do that. But like it's jealous in a good way. There's two good jealousies described in the Bible. The first one is God. God's jealous of our affection. He says, I have this hesed for you. And hesed is this word that we find all over the Bible, translated as like enduring affection or loving kindness. And it's this type of love that's like this endless covenant. God says, no, I have that kind of love for you. Don't go chasing after other gods. They have nothing for you and they don't love you. I'm jealous of your affection. And the other kind of good jealousy that's in the Bible is this marital jealousy. There's only room for two here. It's okay if you don't want your husband to date around. That's good. That's all right. Okay? It's where the tradition of the veil comes from, actually. Like thousands and thousands of years ago, when a woman got engaged, what her fiance would do is take a veil and he'd place it just over her eyes, and that veil symbolized something, okay? As soon as she drank the wine and the mom smashed the plate, the fiance had to pay the father a bride price, a dowry, because it costs something to make her yours. And as soon as he had paid the price, he got to put a veil over her eyes, and that signified her purity and her commitment. It was a way of telling all the other guys, like, no, I have made a commitment to one and only one. Don't talk to me, don't approach me about, like, dating you instead. If you do, there's going to be trouble because love is jealous. Love is jealous and narrow, like the grave is jealous and narrow. Graves are not good at sharing. I don't know if you knew that, but once they get you, they tend to, like, hang on real tight. It's not like, if you want to get up tonight, go visit a few other graves, go for it, as long as you come home to me. That's not how graves work. Like, they got you, they're keeping you. Same with marriages. Like, if your marriage, maybe physically, or maybe not physically, maybe just emotionally, maybe your thought life, maybe your relational life with people you're interacting with every day, and your mind is starting to drift over here. If it's not narrow, shrink it. Shrink it. It's easy. It's so easy to take one little step, and one little step, and one little step, and end up way further than you wanted to go. True love is narrow. It's jealous. And then she says this, it burns like a blazing fire, like mighty flames. Because the image of blazing fire and mighty flames for the Hebrews conjured up images of God, like of his holiness. That's what the word fire meant to them. And so when she says love burns like a mighty flame, she's saying true love is divine. It's holy. It's not just between two people. It actually involves the creator of those two people. When you get married, it's not a contract. Like, okay, as long as you fulfill this, and you do this, and you do this, and you do this, and you look like this, and it pleases me, then I'll love you. But if any of that changes, it's a covenant that can't be broken. We're going to do this forever. That's how it works. And it's a covenant not just with your spouse, but with God. It's a vow that you make. You may have noticed this before at weddings, and if you haven't officiated a bunch of them, you may never have noticed. But when you get to the point in the program in a wedding where it says vows, there's 2 steps there, always. And this 2-step vow process is not modern. It's not one that we invented. It's one that we got from thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago. This is an ancient 2-step process. And here's how it works. You'll be familiar as soon as I talk about it. The first step is, do you promise before God and these witnesses to love and to cherish, to have and to hold, in sickness and in health, for better or worse, richer or poorer? If so, you'll say, I do. That moment is a vertical covenant. What you're being asked when you say I do is, do you promise the Creator, the one who created that person you're looking at, the one who invented them, the one who wired them up uniquely, the one who knit them together in their mother's womb, the one who loved that person enough that he gave his life for them? Do you promise you're going to love them like that? Do you promise you're going to love that person self-sacrificially? We make that covenant with God. When you say I do, you're making a promise vertically to God that that's the kind of love you intend to have. And then if both parties make the vertical covenant, you move to the horizontal covenant. Either read your own vows or the repeat after me. I, Mike, take you, Jenny, to having a, whatever, all that stuff, right? And that's promising the other person. But vows is a 2-step process at a wedding because it has been for thousands of years. Because God designed marriage and he designed love to be a covenant not just with another person, but with him as well. Marriage is holy, and God takes it personally when we're unfaithful. He takes it personally. He says, my love never fails. Yours shouldn't either. I think the most violent thing you can do to a human soul is to make a promise of faithfulness and break it. It's epically destructive. Whether you're unfaithful physically or whether you're unfaithful with an image on a screen or a thought in your mind, it's epically destructive to the human soul. True love is a divine covenant, and it's strong. It's strong. Many waters cannot quench ahava, love. Rivers cannot sweep it away. There's nothing people in the ancient world feared more than the water, than the seas and the rivers and the depths, because to them, they were completely unknowable, and they were uncontrollable. And in saying waters cannot quench ahava, this passionate love of the will, she's saying true love is resolute. It's unbreakable. It keeps going. True love is unafraid to enter into the fire swamp. It's not worried about rodents of unusual size. It laughs in the face of torture unto mostly death. That's one of the top 10 movies ever made. And if you disagree, you're wrong. Okay? It's so good. But like love like that, the reason Wesley chased Buttercup, like love like that is not found every day. It doesn't grow on trees. It's not around every corner. When you find it, you cling to it. It keeps on. It clings to hope. And Solomon's beloved closes her thoughts on love by saying this: if one were to give all the wealth of one's house for love, it would be utterly scorned. This is my favorite part. I love it. Because she starts by talking about all these horrible, scary things in nature that are totally uncontrollable. Like love is stronger than death and fire and storms and raging seas and even money. She knows how it is. She's like, if you weren't convinced by all that stuff, I know what you love most. Money. Okay, you didn't think love was better than death. Love is even better than money. What? But she's saying like, true love is extraordinary. It's priceless. It's invaluable. It's like, think of all the things that money can do. Think of all the reasons that we're drawn to it. Think of all the violence and terrible things that are done in the name and the pursuit of money. But when it comes to love, money doesn't matter. The Beatles said it best: can't buy me love. You can't buy it. It's not buyable. It's not affordable. It's pure. It's a gift. Thank you. It's extraordinary. And this is the picture God gives us of what marriage is designed to be, of how it's meant to work in our lives. God designed marriage for our good, and when we use it according to his design, it works. It works. Solomon's beloved closes the book by saying, hey, I waited for this. I fought for it. I protected my purity. I went through the ups and the downs of marriage. I've been putting in the work to this, and what I found was peace. And what I've been able to give to Solomon is peace. In some translations, it's contentment, but it's this Hebrew word shalom. And shalom is this holistic concept that means nothing missing, nothing broken. Shalom is also the root word of the name Solomon. So it's this interesting way to close this book on love. She said, in shalom, I've found shalom. In shalom, I've been able to give shalom. In this marriage relationship, Solomon and I have found and have given fullness and completeness. In God's design, men and women are created to fit together, like pieces of a puzzle that combine to form a beautiful picture. They're created to fit together, not just in the obvious physical way, but in a spiritual and an emotional one too. That's why it's profoundly different to sit on a beach and watch the waves roll in with a woman than it is to sit on a beach and watch the waves with a dog. It's just different. It's just not the same thing. We're created that way. You guys, oh man, from the very beginning, like the first time in the Bible that Adam lays eyes on Eve, he can't even help it. Like he sees her for the first time and he opens his mouth and poetry just starts flowing out. He looks and he's like, oh, I am Ish. She is Isha. I am man. She is, whoa, man. That's in the Bible. That's in the Bible. Marriage is designed by God for our good. Okay, but it's also designed by God to point to a bigger reality. It's not the end in and of itself. It's made by God, but it's meant to display God. Check this out. See if it reminds you of any Bible stories you've ever heard of. Covenant, sacrificial love, dying to oneself so that another may fully live, paying the price, whatever it costs, to seal you for his own forever, so you can go and live with him and be fully known and fully loved. Marriage is meant to be a picture of the gospel meta-narrative, of this great grand story of mankind, that Jesus paid the price so that we could be pure and we could be his and we could be loved. It's a small picture. It's an insufficient picture. It's an imperfect picture, but it's a picture of the incredible, intimate love relationship God created us for with himself. The kind of love that sent Jesus to die on a cross so that we could be forgiven, we could be set free, and our reconciliation could be accomplished, and our eternity of being fully known and fully loved in right relationship could be secured forever. That's the ultimate story of humanity. And marriage is a picture that helps us understand that more fully. I want you guys to know, again, wherever you're at, whether you are married, whether you want to be someday, or whether you're in a position to influence someone else's marriage, true love that makes marriages thrive, that makes happily even after a reality and not just a pipe dream. That kind of love is life-giving, enduring, affectionate, resolute, narrow, extraordinary, and divine. And you may be sitting here this morning thinking, my marriage doesn't look like that. I don't know how many of the things on that list I'm checking off right now. I'm not there. My marriage is broken. I'm a long way off for that. I bought what the world sold me. I've settled for less. Is my marriage just not working? If you're sitting there thinking that, if you think, man, I don't check all those boxes, I got good news for you. First of all, that's all of us. That's every marriage in this room. None of us have it figured out yet. And second of all, that kind of love is learned. It's learned. You guys have no idea how many hours it took me on thesaurus.com to come up with an acrostic from 3 verses in the middle of Song of Songs so that some of us might remember some of what it says about marriage, and all of us hopefully will walk away remembering that it's a journey to get there. Because we start out selfish, and that kind of love is selfless. It doesn't happen without work. It doesn't happen without the transforming power of the Spirit inside of us. It's learned, not earned. Or it's learned and earned, not given. It's not natural. I think so many of us get to the point, because our culture pounds this message into our heads. When life gets hard, when marriage gets hard, when relationships gets hard, we decide, I must be with the wrong person. And it's the opposite. You are the wrong person. Like, we start out selfish, right? And relationships are really easy at the beginning. And sometimes we get tempted into believing this will never take work. This will always be easy. It should always just be as simple as it is. But the reason relationships are easy when you're dating and when you're infatuated is that they're about you. You walk into a relationship with a pretty girl or a handsome guy thinking, what can I get out of this? And when you're focusing on you, everything's always easy. The problem is when you get married, focusing on you doesn't work. And you got to get to the point where you realize this whole thing only functions if I worry more about what they need than what I need. I have to die to myself, and that is always hard because we were born selfish. It's learned. It's learned. Life-giving, enduring, affectionate, resolute, narrow, extraordinary, divine, true love is something we got to fight for. We got to move toward. From like where we are in this selfish space toward this bigger, better picture that God has of self-giving love that brings flourishing, that brings peace, that brings a situation where nothing's missing and nothing's broken. We got to move from who we are as selfish people to people that live and love like Jesus, and we can do it because that's what he did for us. He gave himself for us, and he calls us to give ourselves for one another. So I want you to know, in the middle of a world that's going to give you different messages, God created you, and he wired you, and he designed you for something better than the broken, self-centered understanding of marriage that our world has. You were built for more and better than that. I want to close with my favorite verse in the entire book, Song of Songs. It's in chapter 2, verse 4, and she talks about kind of their wedding, and she says this, he's brought me to the banquet hall and let his banner over me be love. He let his banner over me be love. And the word for banner there is this Hebrew word for battle standard or flag. Each king had his own flag. And when all the kings would meet in a giant field to do battle, each king would fly his flag high. And what you'd know because of that banner is where home was for you, where safe was for you. No matter what was happening in the battle, everyone could look. And when you saw that standard, it was a mark of identity, and it was a mark of pride, and it was a mark of belonging. You knew that that's where you were home. And she takes a look at her beloved, and she says, that's where I belong. In the middle of this, scary, dark world, the place where I find my identity, the place where I know I belong is with him because his banner over me is love. That's what I come back to. And my prayer in my own marriage has always been that my banner over Jenny would be love. That by my actions and by my sacrifice, she would know that the place that she belongs in this world, the place she's safe no matter what happens, is with me. And I am not there. It's learned. It's learned and earned and not just given. And I feel like in my own life, I have to conquer the poison of selfishness, maybe more than most. But I'm fighting for that picture. And my prayer for your marriages And my prayer for your future marriages is that you will fight for that picture, that the banner will be love. That's what God designed you for. It's who he made you to be. It's how he made love to function in your life. It's how he loves you. It's how he loves you. His banner over you is love. Don't ever doubt that. No matter what's going on in your human relationships, no matter how hard you got to fight to get from here to God's best, no matter where you're at right now, don't ever doubt for 1 second. God's banner over you is love, and marriage is just a picture of that. At its best, it's an insufficient picture of a God who has an unconditional, amazing, self-sacrificial love for you, who tells you you are not defined by what you've done, you're not defined by what has been done to you, you're defined by what he did for you. It's in God's love, in the middle of this dark, scary world, that we find our hope and our safety and our place of belonging and our identity. And because his banner over us is love, that's how we can love each other. Will you guys pray with me? Lord, thank you so much for your love. Thank you for giving us marriage as a picture of what it can be like. But thank you that marriage points to this bigger, grander story that every one of us is a part of a God who bought us with a price, who gave everything because he loved us. Thank you for loving us with that self-sacrificial, incredible, unspeakably amazing, huge love. Thank you that your banner over us is love, and in a scary world full of darkness and violence and hatred, that we know our future is secure, our eternity is secure, that we are fully known and fully loved by God who died for us. Thank you for that, Jesus. Thank you for that. And Lord, help us today to take that story and apply it to our human relationships, to our marriages, to our future marriages, and to every relationship that we have. Let us be a people who give of ourselves the way that you gave of yourself to us. In Jesus' name, amen.